Alright, now I wanted to show you how to do stockinette stitch. We actually call it stocking stitch, but whatever you call it doesn't really matter. It's where you're doing one row knit and the other row purl. And this is the look that you get. It's your knitting that you're familiar with. Looks like that, and that's what it looks like on the wrong side. Okay, to do this, you're just going to use your knit stitch and your purl stitch, and you're going to do one row knit, one row purl, one row knit, one row purl. I want to show you how to turn around in that. So I'm just going to do the knit row with you. So you put your needle in there, come around, through and off. Now remember, when you're doing knit, your yarn needs to stay on the right hand side. When we do our ribbing, I'll show you that a little bit clearer as to which way your yarn is for your knit and purl stitch. But for knitting, it's got to be on the outside, on this side. So that's pretty important. It needs to be that side. And I'll show you for the purl which side it is. But let's get to the end. So you go ahead, knit, 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 knit to the end. And then it's like, okay, what do I do once I've got to the end of my stitches? Well, you're going to turn it around, because now I've transferred it from this needle onto this needle, okay? And, okay, so now I'm at my last stitch. I knit it, and I've got my loose needle. Now you're just going to turn your work around this way, because your needles need to be facing that way. So it's just going to be looking like that, and now I've got a purl row. And you can see what your purl stitch looks like. Your purl stitch has a little bump to it. At the bottom of the stitch you got a bump. That's your purl stitch. Your knit stitch is made of a little V, and it's a flat stitch. There's your actual stitch over here. Okay, that's your knit stitch. Then on the other side it's a purl stitch. So it's a knit stitch here, and then you got a purl stitch over here. And that's what your purl looks like. Now, to do your purl, your yarn is on this side of your work. Knit, it was on the right. Purl, it's got to be on, it's got to face you. Your yarn has to face you. So when you're knitting, it's away from you. When you're purling, it's got to be towards you. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember. So to purl, we're going to just do that and go through here. Remember, your yarn must stay towards you to purl. Okay, must stay facing you. If you put your work down, go do something else, your yarn goes this way, and you come back and your yarn is over here. This is the knitting position. Away from you is knit. Now you say, okay, I want to purl, so you come in here, your yarn is here. Now look what happens. Now I'm going to, okay, so your yarn is on the knitting side. You're going to purl, and you're going to come over here, and you're going to purl. You're going to end up with a funny stitch, number one, and you've just added on a new stitch. Look there. Now you've just created a new stitch. So be careful of that. You're going to just purl. Yarn is facing you to purl. And that's all that you do. And it's the same thing when you get to the end of your needle. You're just going to do what you did with the knit. Turn your yarn around, turn your needles around, and start on the other side. And this is what you do for stockinette stitch. So, I mean, if you're familiar with doing your knit and your purl, you can go ahead and make a scarf even. Just cast on as many stitches as you like. Whoops. And I'm going to show you a few tricks, like if you drop your stitches, what do you do? But I just want you to get familiar with this. Okay, there's my last purl. Once again, turn around, and your new work will be facing this side. Alright, now that is what your stitch looks like. There's your stockinette. Very nice. Nice, thin, good tension here. When you're messing with your tension, you'll see your stitches are slightly different. If you go looser and tighter, you'll see it. So you want to try and keep the tension the same, and the tension is going to come from how you're pulling this over here. So there you have your stockinette stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do your garter stitch. Alright, so to do our garter stitch, all that you're going to do is knit. and you're going to get this look. So there's nothing to that one. You're going to just knit and knit one row, knit another row, knit another one, and knit another. So now we're doing the garter stitch. I'm just going to keep knitting here. Alright, so now you turn your work around, and on this one, same thing, you're going to simply knit. So you're going to just come in here and you're going to knit. And that's going to give us our garter stitch, because now you'll see on the other side it's starting to give me the same pattern as here. There's my purl on the other side. See, I'm knitting it on this side, but it's becoming a purl stitch on the other side. So as long as I just keep knitting, I'm going to get that garter stitch look. So all you do is knit one row, knit the next, knit one, and knit the next. So I'm going to do a few rows and show you what it looks like. So once you have just done plain knit rows, your garter stitch, this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's very similar to the back. Slightly different, but basically it's very similar to that. And this is what you would look like. So that's your stocking or stockinette stitch, and this is your garter stitch. And that's the difference between the two. What I want to do is I want to go through a few of the problems that you might find between your knit and your stockinette. So I want to just go through, troubleshoot a few issues, and then we'll go on to the ribbing. So let me do that with you now. Alright, so you might find that as you're knitting along, you are coming across some problems. Now, those problems could be very varied. I'm not too sure what they could be, but I know some common problems are you start off with a certain amount of stitches and you end up with a bunch more or a bunch less. Well, that is incorrect unless you are wanting to create something like that. So in other words, you don't want to increase or decrease the amount of stitches you have when you're not intending to. And that seems to be quite a common mistake for beginners. I am actually not too sure what you do unless I can see. I'm not sure what you do, but I'll go through a few things that I think of. You know, maybe your very first thing that you do wrong is, let's see, one of these. I'm just going to be doing knitting. It's possible that instead of going, these are just general mistakes. So it might be that instead of going in here, you are going in the bottom of the stitch. And the other thing I find is that people drop stitches, and that's also a problem. Now it's possible, as I say, you might, this is where you're supposed to go. This is the stitch. But it's possible you're going into this stitch. Okay, which means if I knit here, and then I'm going to go like this. Look there, I've now got a real problem over here. Now I've got a big piece of yarn which shouldn't be there. And then I'm going to knit again, and I'm going to say, alright, gosh, look now, I've got this big hole here. What happened to my work? That's one mistake that is possible that you've done. As I say, unless I'm really working with you by yourself, I won't know what you have done. But that's one thing that you need to be careful of. You don't want to go in the bottom of the stitch. You want to go where it's supposed to be. You don't want to go in the bottom, you need to go over here. Okay, now just put it back as a knit. So you be sure to do the correct thing. Go here, don't go under there. Okay, so that's one thing that I can think of. Another thing is possibly that you're going in this side of the stitch. That's not going to be too bad a mistake, but you don't want to go in that side. It might change your texture a little bit. You preferably want to go in from this side unless your stitch is on wrong. If your stitch is back to front, in other words, if I've got my stitch on this way, I can see it's not sitting the right way. It's hard to get in from here. Then I go in this side. But that's only as you get more advanced. Don't worry about that at this stage. I'm trying to think what else you would do. The other thing that you might find that, like I said before, when you're knitting, be sure that your yarn is this side. that your yarn is away from you. When you're purling, be sure that your yarn is facing you, that you're facing this way. And when you knit, it's that side. When you purl, it's this side. That's very important. You've got to be careful of that. The other thing that you need to, be careful that you're not knitting two together by mistake, because that's going to decrease your stitches. Or you might be going in there, and instead of bringing it out, you actually going into that stitch again. That's going to increase. So you've got to be very specific in what you're doing. Now the other thing that you might find is your work is either too loose or too tight. If your work is too loose or too tight, it's because of your tension over here. This yarn is what's making your work tighter or looser, and it depends on whether you're pulling it tight. Now look, I'm going to pull this really tight. Look how tight my stitch is going around my needle. And if I tighten it over here, my stitches are going to be extremely tight. Look how loose these are. I'm going to have very tight stitches here, and this is going to mess up my overall fabric because it's far too tight. And when you come in again, your stitches are going to be, when you come in from the other side, now we start with the next row, this is going to be very tight to get into. You're going to struggle to get into your stitches. So if you find your stitches are very tight, your tension is too tight, and that's going to cause problems because your knitting is going to be very tight together. Now, you could be doing the opposite thing. You could be going so loose that you're doing this. And it's just so loose that you've got extra pieces of yarn that are draping in the back because you're going too loose. You got to be careful of that too. You don't want that. Say for example, say I'm doing it like this, so loose like that. Whoops, I'm not used to knitting like that. But say you go so loose, you're going to have these big things in the back like this, and it's not going to look good. And you might by mistake think that's a stitch, and then somehow put it on your needle, and now you've got another stitch there. You see, because when you come back on this side and you're looking here and you're knitting this and you see this part over here and you think, oh gosh, I dropped a stitch somewhere, and you put it on and you knit it. Well, now you've just added another stitch. So I don't know what mistakes you might be facing, but these are some of the little issues that you might want to be aware of. Be sure your tension is kind of medium. You want to keep it as much the same throughout your work. Now if you're very tense, you're going to make it very tight. It's one of those things. But otherwise, if I think of more problems that I can think of as we go along, I will go through them with you, but those are a few of the problems. So anyway, let's go ahead and start with our ribbing.